Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Guy L. Freer and Bob Price. Now, their show airs nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. Gael and Bob maintain a focus on sharing books, publishing, marketing, and writing solutions. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more. Okay, audience, here's Gael and Bob.
Hi, Bob. Are we mind melding?
Yes.
Oh,
It's
actually,
one of those Vulcan things.
Vulcan. Oh, I love Star Trek. My dad used to watch it all. Right, Star Trek and all the. I loved him. I love Star Trek. My favorite is
It's
Jean-Luc
over.
Picard.
It's over.
Oh, he was hot.
He was hot.
Oh my gosh! My son bought me a Jean-Luc Picard doll. It's still in the original wrapping and everything. I understand it's worth a lot.
What is it with no hair?
Yeah. Well, have you seen my husband?
But you know, Shatner
It's
wore a
you-
wig through that whole series.
I know.
The whole series.
What?
Shatner wore a wig through the whole series.
Did he?
Yes.
I did not know
Yes.
that. Oh, so Kirk is also so always bald.
Yeah.
There's something about the French used to say you've never made love until you've made love to a bald-headed man. Woo!
The French say that?
Yes, they do.
There's that thing about the headboard.
Yeah. What can I tell you? But who do we have today, Bob?
Well, he's been talking Greg Stout.
Greg Stout.
Uninvited, he
And-
was talking.
And he's missing a little bit of hair on top.
Well,
Well, I
you
don't know
excited?
what to tell you.
So tell us about Greg Stout.
Yeah. Control yourself. Greg is an author of Gideon's Ghost and Connor's War, both young adult novels set in small town America in the mid-60s, and Lost Little Girl, his debut Jackson Gamble novel, which received the 2022 Shamus Award for Best PI Novel, first PI novel. His second Gamble mystery, The Gone Man, was released in December 2022, and his third, Woman in the Wind, was released in November of 2023. His next release, Long Time Gone, is scheduled for October of this year. Greg's also the author of 22 illustrated railroad histories, including the Missouri Pacific and the Frisco, both at one time headquartered in St. Louis. A complete listing of Greg's published works can be found at GregoryStoutAuthor.com. Greg resides with his wife, two cats, Wallace and Gromit, in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, where he's a member of the Heartland Writers Guild, the Southeast Missouri Writers Guild, and is a member of the board of directors for the Missouri Writers Guild. Do you have any time to write?
very little.
Well,
Yeah,
very
my
little.
goodness gracious.
Yeah, really.
Well, welcome, Greg.
Thank you. It's nice to be back, actually.
Yeah, that's right. This is his second time on our
Yeah,
show.
yeah.
Sometimes we let people come back. Only the very special.
And I was told I get a pay raise, too.
Yeah, from nothing to nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. We go from single nothings
We
to double
Double nothing.
to double nothing.
Double nothing.
And donuts.
And donuts.
Yeah, we include the donuts for
But-
free.
But I had to bring my own Diet Coke.
Yeah.
So that should give
Diet
that-
soda.
that will
We're
give
not
our
doing
listeners-
any
Yes,
advertising.
that will give our listeners an idea of the largesse that's bestowed on your guests.
Yes. Only the very best.
Well, we have an audience today.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
So,
So,
ask me a question.
It's your turn.
Oh, it says B.
Yeah. Well,
I thought that
yeah.
it said G.
No, it says B.
It's a well-oiled machine.
We just move right through this so smoothly.
Yeah.
This is the second time that you've been on our show.
Yes.
A lot has happened since your first visit, but let's start with a bit of background. You started your career in what?
My writing career or my work career?
Your work career.
My work career. Okay. I spent 27 years in the private sector. The last thing I did there was I was vice president of sales and marketing for an auto parts manufacturing company. I was traveling about 100 days a year, 100,000 miles a year. I've been in every state in the union. I've been in every Canadian province except one. I got to Australia. I got to Singapore, several places in Latin America. Most of those were business-related trips. In 19...
Wow.
And you got back.
And I got back, yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and Australia is really a cool place. It's just like California, except they drive on the other side of the road. The company that I worked for in 1997 got bought out, and so I went back to school and I got a master's in education, and then I taught in the public school system for 12 years, mostly U.S. history, but also at various times language arts. I had a reading section every year. I taught drama. I taught film criticism, and I even taught a section of Latin. And I retired.
Latin?
Yes, and I retired in 2010. And since then, I haven't done a blasted thing except work on writing. And it's good because it keeps me off of golf courses.
Can you speak Latin?
It's a dead language.
It's basically a dead language. Yeah, I could probably.
You mean it's not live?
It's not live.
Like
Hey,
that.
to Gregory.
No.
Omnia Gallia est divisa in partes tres.
Oh my gosh, what was that?
All of Gaul is divided into three parts. That was for
And Gaul is France.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know that.
So that was part of Caesar's orations,
Right.
or
That's right.
yeah,
And then it's Et tu Brute, then
Yeah.
falls Caesar.
Arx Capitoliumque and Magno Pericolo fuerunt. The citadel and the capital were in great danger.
That's right.
I thought you said it was a dead language.
It is.
It is. Trust us.
Oh. We've
We're-
given it.
We're pounding a dead
Getting the
horse
last bit of
here.
life out of it.
Well, tell us about your writing career.
Yeah.
How did you get started in writing?
Well, the railroad books is where I got started. And I was a member of a Missouri Pacific Historical Society. And they have a magazine that they put out quarterly. And one of the times that I got the magazine, they said they were looking for a contributing editor. So I contacted the editor-in-chief, I guess you would call him. And I said, I might be interested in this. Tell me what the job is. And he goes, it's yours. So that was that. And so
It's yours.
Short interview, huh?
yeah, it was a very short interview. And so, I sent a couple of articles in, and then I was working on a third one, and I said to him, this thing is really getting long. And I said, if I keep going like this, it's going to turn into a book. And he said, do you think you could write a book? And I said, yeah, I think I could write a book. And he goes, well, good, because I'm thinking of starting a publishing company. And so out of that came the first of the railroad books. And eventually there were 2 more that I did with this publisher. There were 19 that I did with another publisher, Morning Sun Books in New Jersey. And that pretty well kept me busy. I got writing fiction because I was teaching 8th graders. And after 12 years, I figured I kind of knew what 8th graders read because I did teach a section of reading. And the very last quarter that before I retired for real, they gave me a student teacher. District took pity on me. And
And gave you a student
they
teacher.
gave me a student teacher.
Oh,
And so,
good gracious.
so she was up in front of the class waving her arms and doing her best to maintain order. And I was told to kind of stay out of her way. So I had nothing to do. And so I was sitting at my desk and I thought, well, I can write a book. And so I wrote what turned out to be Gideon's Ghost. And it
And
took,
that, let's see, I do have a
it's
copy
at
of
the
that.
bottom of the pile there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
do have a copy.
that's the
of
oldest
that
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right here.
Yeah.
Whoops. Let's take a look at that because I
Okay.
do want everyone to see what that looks like, so that yeah. Do we have that?
Looks like
Gideon's
that.
Ghost. Okay, yeah, it looks like that. And we can find that on Amazon.
Yes.
So there we go, folks.
Yeah, that's from Beacon Publishing Group.
Okay.
Okay,
Alright.
so I wrote that thing and I sent it out and nothing much happened and I kind of let it go. And I continued to work on the railroad books and eventually amassed a big stack of them. I connected with a writers group after we moved to Cape Girardeau, and somebody there was talking about, they had a list of publishers who were looking for young adult manuscripts. And I thought, well, we'll give this a shot. And I think I had read somewhere that Joseph Heller, when he wrote Catch-22, got rejected 20 sometimes. And I thought, okay, I'll give myself 25 times. And if nobody picks it up after 25 times, I will assume that this thing is not commercial and we'll let it go with that. Turn off your phone there, Bucko.
You know, I already yelled at one person
Yeah.
for that.
I did.
I already did my best teacher voice for that.
We have a little interlude, folks.
I turned it off.
Well, is it off now?
We think.
Apparently not. Hello?
Yes.
This is not going the way I had anticipated. Please continue,
Okay,
Greg.
anyway, I sent it out. I think the 16th query that I sent out, they picked it up.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And of course, that made it easier because when I wrote the second YA book, which is called Connor's War, they just took it. There's,
Right.
You know,
Commons War is good.
because now you got,
So is Gideon's Ghost. I've read both of them, by the way.
once you have your peg in the ground with a publisher, as long as you don't
Right.
send them something
Well,
that's
let's
really
see.
El Stinko.
Right. Let's see. We have Gideon's Ghost here too.
Yeah, we do.
No?
Well, we have Connor's War, which is what we were
Connor's
talking
War.
about. Yeah, that's
That's
that
the
one.
one. Right.
You need
Here we go.
you need an extra pair of hands.
I know. There we go. There's Connor's War. Okay, so everybody gets to see that one too. All right.
And and because I was a history teacher, I try to cook a little bit of U.S. history into it. And the '60s were a pretty turbulent time, so there was
Yep.
lots to talk about. As far as the mysteries go, I actually wrote what it turned into The Gone Man in 1983. I was commuting back and forth on the train to work when we were living in Chicago, and I had nothing to do. So I would check books out of the library and read them on the train, and some of them were pretty good, and some of them I thought I can do better than that. And so I quite literally sat on the train with a 3-ring binder and college ruled paper, and I hand wrote this novel. And it sat for, 18, 19 years. No, almost 40 years.
Wow.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a whack at this. And so I sent out, in the meantime, I had some other manuscripts, but I sent out Lost Little Girl, which was the first one that got published. And I thought, well, I'll give myself, we'll see. So I sent, I think, 10 queries. 4 publishers wanted it. But one of them offered me a 3-book deal. So that was the one that I took. And that was Level Best Books
3-book deal.
in Baltimore. Yeah. And so I filled that contract out. I've written 3 for them. And then they gave me another 3-book deal. So we're into that one. The book 4, as you mentioned in the intro, will be out in October. I'm working on 5 and
All right.
I'll get there.
So now the one that's coming out now is the one that's out now is the one that's right here, right?
Yes,
And
that's correct. That's the
and
newest one, Woman in the Wind.
Woman in the Wind.
Yes.
Okay, and the next one that's coming out is
It'll be called Long Time Gone.
Long Time Gone, and that's not out yet.
It's in going through its editing process. There are 3 edits.
Oh, okay.
And so we've done the developmental edit and we did the kind of the first pass, which is to say, yeah, we like this book. And then it goes through what they call red lines. And that's basically copy editing where they're saying, take that comma out. Don't use that preposition there. It's tinkering with the grammar.
Right.
What's
And-
the third one?
That's the red line edit. So the first one is somebody reads it and says, yeah, we like it.
Okay.
So that's kind of I don't know what you would call it. Developmental edit is where they say, okay, this is all good, but this chapter here doesn't quite make sense. Maybe if you reverse the order of these.
Okay.
Sequence
Making
of
sure that
Yeah, it's to
character A is dead and
it's to
stays
fix
dead
the
through the
story.
whole
It
book.
stays dead. Yeah, he was dead here. He's still dead.
Right.
Or he's still driving the same car, or whatever it is. It's
Right.
got to do with continuity mostly.
Right.
And then the third one, a red line edit is what they call it. That's copy editing.
Right. Right. Okay.
And then if all of that goes well, and if they like the cover art, then, and I was cautioned very early on. They said, they're going to change it around a lot. They're not going to like your cover. Nobody's ever done that to me.
No.
No,
But you don't do the covers.
no, but I do look online and I find a photo. So in the case of Lost Little Girl, the books are set in Nashville. And so what I wanted was the Nashville skyline at night. And that's what we got with the Cumberland River in front of it. And we've kind of carried those nighttime images, big city nighttime images forward. So the second one, it's actually Lower Broadway, again in Nashville. The third one, it's supposed to be Printer's Alley, and I guess maybe it is.
Right. So why Nashville?
Because New York has been done to
You lived in
death.
Nashville, I think.
Yeah, well, because I lived there.
It's a nice town.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I lived there for 5 years, but
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. I figured, I don't, and so it was a city that I knew well enough.
Right.
I grew up in St. Louis, but geez, I moved away in 1967, and it's not what it was when I
Right.
was.
Nothing's changed.
Well, not much. But there's a new baseball stadium.
Yeah, KXOK still here.
Yeah, KXOK, yeah.
Yay!
But we're not blabbing it to the rabbit anymore. But, we've gone through a couple of baseball stadiums, so some things have changed. But I thought, okay, it's a city that I knew, and it was of a size that I could get my head around, and that hasn't been done to death.
True.
Because between Los Angeles and New York City and Boston
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Miami, they're kind of there.
Yeah.
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 And it's in recent years, particularly, it's grown so much, and because of country music and because it's become a commercial center generally, it's twice the size. When I lived there, it was 480,000. Now it's almost 1 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fastest
Yeah,
growing
it is
city.
very much a city on the go.
It's a real commercial thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting driving through a Nashville
horrifying.
too, because you see all these cranes building these buildings.
constantly. Yeah, what used to be a railroad yard is now a series of high rises.
Wow. What inspired you to do PI novels?
I liked them. Guess I sort of cut my teeth on Raymond Chandler, his Philip Marlowe mysteries. I liked Ross McDonald. I liked Dashiell Hammett, and I liked that style. One of the things we were going to talk about, I know, has to do with writing in first-person narrative, and to me, in a way, it's an easier book to write because I don't have to keep track of what other characters are thinking about. If you read a Dan Brown, for example, there's X number of characters that go through there, and at any given time, you're in various characters' heads.
True.
And on the one hand, I think it simplifies plotting a little bit because you're getting the same story from different points of view. So some event happened, and now Robert is talking about it, and now Gael talks about it, and now I talk about it, and now some other character. But it's not really moving the story forward. It's just you're moving the characters forward.
When you speak about plotting, do you use a visual board to lay out your plots? When we were talking to
You mean a storyboard?
Yeah.
Yeah, storyboard.
No. What I did do with the first 2.5 books is I had made notes to myself.
Mhm.
This is kind of how it's going to progress. The third book, I did about half of it, and then I thought, well, maybe I can just go ahead and finish it. So I did. The fourth book, I had nothing. I just sort of started writing, and I thought, okay, what reasonably would happen next? Not like James Bond, where a car flies,
Right.
or something really
So
outlandish
you
takes
approached
place.
this one really entirely differently.
Yes, and I thought, maybe I should go back and try to lay this thing out that way, and I can't do it. So I get to this point, and I think, okay, what now should happen?
Right.
Given the circumstances that we've set up. And one of the things that I discovered is sometimes when your plot gets stuck, it's because you didn't set it up right in the beginning.
Right.
There just aren't enough.
Avenues.
Right. And with a mystery, a lot of those avenues turn out to be blind ends. But that's what makes a mystery a mystery. And so if you don't set that up right, there's nowhere for him to go but straight to the finish.
Right.
So it's a different challenge.
So that's a mystery.
It's
You don't know where you're going.
yeah, it's a mystery. I don't know where I'm going.
Yes, okay.
So now, okay, so with this book, you started writing it in you started with an outline sort of, and then you found you couldn't do it with an outline.
Yeah.
All right, and so you just started writing. Now this next book, you just started writing,
Yep. Same thing with Long Time Gone. I just started writing.
and so how is that turning out?
Well, I'm 33,000 words into it, and right at the minute, well, up until yesterday, I was stuck. And then I started reading something else, and I thought, oh, I kind of like the way this guy did that. I think I could not plagiarize it, but
But the
there's a
concept,
story element
right?
that I could go in this direction for a little bit. Because ultimately, in every writer, if I know you've talked to enough of them that probably more than one of them have mentioned that soggy second act, and that's where you've got a really killer beginning and you got a really neat ending.
But the middle
But
part,
the middle part, that's
yeah.
that second act that just that.
yeah, and that's the hardest part to get yourself out of.
It is, because you don't want to look like you're treading water. It needs to be. And
You
so
don't-
very often that's where there will be some kind of a subplot.
Right. And you have a love interest in your
I
stories.
do. I have a huge crush on Maggie.
Is she your dream girl?
She could be.
She's a counselor, right?
Well, what inspired you with the character Jackson Gamble? Where did that name come from? And give us the background on Jackson Gamble.
Well, I briefly worked for the railroad during my long and checkered career. For a while, I was kind of like a fly in a garbage can, and I was sort of bouncing from
Fly
one to
on the garbage
fly in a
can?
garbage can. Yeah, and I was sort of
What an image. Fly
bouncing
on a
from-
garbage can.
that's why I'm a writer.
Oh,
And so I briefly had this job when I was living in Chicago. I worked for the Illinois Central Railroad selling locomotives.
really?
Yes.
Selling
Now,
locomotives.
I will tell you, in that business, you know when you've sold something.
I would think so.
This is not like Fuller Brush, going and knocking on the door. A locomotive was around $650,000, and this was in early 1980s. And there's a story that goes with that, which
That was
probably-
cheap then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, because yes. Anyway, there was three guys that were connected with the sales end of this thing, and one of them was a guy named Sam Gamble, and I kind of liked that name, but I thought, well, I can't really just use it the way it is, so he needs a better first name. And then I thought about Jack Daniels, which is the distillery in Tennessee, and as I recall, my mother had a taste for Jack Daniels, and so that was sort of how that name evolved.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's a good name.
That
Well, I
isn't-
used to work for a railroad, but the
yeah.
Chicago Milwaukee.
Oh, and my husband used to do, what did you used to do for the railroad?
Telegrapher?
A telegrapher for
Really?
the railroad. Yes.
That was back when they were building the Transcontinental Railroad, right?
Right, right. And they had 50 miles on each side of the
Yeah.
railroad.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Back in the land grant era.
I knew that well.
Did you fight any Indians?
Well, it was still classified as a telegrapher, but most of it was done by boys.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But they still have the key on the tables where
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You mean you had hair then?
He had hair then too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was BG before Gael.
Yeah, that's when the hair went.
Yeah, that's what happened.
But we digress.
But we digress.
Well, what reoccurring themes?
All right. Well, wait a second. We're going to have to go to commercial in a minute.
So
I'm
do, you,
The lights are on.
so do you have a quick question?
A
I'm-
quick question?
No.
No. But we're going to go to commercial. So,
1,
We-
2, 3.
1, 2, 3, and we'll be
Word.
back.
We're going to sing it, aren't we?
1, 2. No, I don't sing. Are you kidding? That's when the bar leaves. Everybody leaves at that point. We're going to go to commercial. We will be right back with Greg Stout and Jackson Campbell and Long Somebody Gone.
The United States has a strong tradition of welcoming newcomers and refugees. The Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking freedom and safety and in turn help strengthen their own communities. Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what Americans represent to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. All it takes is a helping hand. Are you ready to learn more? Contact the International Institute of St. Louis at info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. That's info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a major legal event and catalyst that contributed to the Civil War. The decision declared that Dred Scott could not be free because he was not a citizen. The 14th Amendment, also called the Dred Scott Amendment, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized here in our country and was intended to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 9, 1868. The Dred Scott Heritage Foundation is requesting a commemorative stamp to be issued from the U.S. Postal Service to recognize and remember the heritage of this amendment by issuing a stamp with the likeness of the man Dred Scott. But we need your support and the support of thousands of people who would like to see this happen. To achieve this goal, we ask you to download, sign, and share the one-page petition with others. To find the petition, please go to dredscottlives.org and click on the Dred Scott Petition Drive on the right side of the page.
Back.
We are back.
We're not finished.
No, we are not finished.
Well, I've got another question for you, though.
Okay.
And I'm trying to, you've told us about plotting, but I'm interested in the research that you do and how you go about it and how you implement the research that you're doing for each of these novels.
Okay. Well, the internet is a marvelous thing because, and that was one of the, back in 1983, when I wrote the first book that wasn't readily available, you go to the library. Now, a lot of the storyline, I think in all of the books, I think in all of them, we touch base with the music industry. Now, I am not a musician and I've never really been involved in the music industry, but I need to kind of know how that generally works, how musicians get paid, which is not maybe the way they used to. What kind of music are people listening to these days? Now, of course, in Nashville, what they primarily do is
Country
Western oriented stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But who are the stars now? What are the record companies that are still extant because a lot of labels have changed or they've merged?
Right.
So there's that. And then also this, we talked about this, I don't know if we were on the air at the time, but the city doesn't look like it used to. And so I get down there a couple times a year. We have friends who live in one of the suburbs, but what I have to do now is go to Google Earth Street View to see what some of these places look like, because the things that I remember, they aren't there.
Right.
They've been replaced by something else, or they've been just eliminated altogether. And so I feel like, yes, this is a work of fiction, but at the same time, I don't want somebody to look at the book and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's obviously never been there.
He doesn't know anything authentic.
He doesn't know anything about the music industry, because those guys don't really, it used to be you got paid when you sold records, but records are a small thing now. It's mostly downloads. And so basically the way they make their money these days.
I'm still listening to 8-track tapes.
Yeah, well, and they made their money off that. But mostly now it's touring.
Yes.
That's what they do. I remember there was a TV thing it was Famous Streets. And so they had, Wall Street, and they had the Champs-Élysées, and they had, what would it be, like Hollywood and Vine,
Mm-hmm.
and Music Row in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked to these two guys that were very well-known country western artists, and they said, well, they got something like 1 million downloads of this song, and it paid them $12,000 because it's like a fraction of a cent that
Wow.
they get for a download. You know, so I
Right.
thought, well, that's not going to take you anywhere. That's
Right.
as lousy as being a writer. So
Yeah, we know about that.
yes, you know, where you get a couple pennies when somebody buys your book. So, you know, they make their money now by touring. Well, you kind of ought to know that. And even if the reader doesn't know that, maybe now they do. And so maybe you come away not just having been entertained, but maybe you learned a little something while you were at it.
Right.
And so sometimes there's a little Civil War history, and sometimes there's, you know, local history. And the one I'm working on now, the opening chapter has to do with Gamble is been retained by a guy who's actually on death row. Well, okay, what does that prison look like?
Right.
And it's in Whiteville, Tennessee, and so I had to go and research what does Whiteville look like. And here's an interesting thing: 90% of the people in that county are male. And
Because of the prison?
yes, because there's only like 4,600 people in the county, but there are 2 penitentiaries there,
Wow.
and those guys are
Wow.
counted in the census.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I thought, well, that's kind of fun, isn't it? That, you know, it might make you a hit
Yeah.
at a cocktail party. I don't know.
Trivia night.
You know,
Trivia,
Yeah, yeah.
trivia night.
Trying
There
to,
we go.
trying to chat up some woman that you think might be
Right.
interested
They,
in. So,
they might want to move there.
so that's a good opener.
The
Yeah.
population is
but there's
really
that,
cool.
but they're inaccessible.
But they're
Do
inaccessible.
you have to go to Nashville?
You have to go to Whiteville.
Oh,
Whiteville.
Whiteville, yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So okay. So what keeps you writing? I mean, now you've got those. You're on your 4th book,
On my 5th one.
5th book. All right. So you have to do 2 more books to
Yeah.
fill the contract
yeah.
that you have.
Right.
So you've got
So part of what keeps me writing is I owe them these books.
right, but then inspiration. You've got to have some inspiration. So what's your inspiration?
Gromit?
I like to think I can do better.
Uh-huh. Competitive with yourself.
You know, I read a thing about the music group, the Eagles, one time, and they said, I think it was, I don't know if it was Henley or the other, and he said, we didn't do this to write hits. We wanted to get better. And that was their focus. That's why they worked as hard as they did. They wanted to get better. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to. I mean, everybody hopes that he or she can catch lightning in a bottle and turn into the next J.K. Rowling or whatever.
Right.
It's very difficult, and I haven't figured it out yet. Believe me, if I did, we'd be having a different
You would be on this
conversation.
show.
Yeah, I'd be running this. I'd have my own radio station.
That's
But-
an interesting statement that you just said. In other words, I
was?
did it because I wanted to be better. And that's interesting. I mean, if we all had that approach, it'd be a different world.
Well,
Yeah.
It-
Well, yeah.
it would. I mean, the character in one of I guess it was maybe in Gideon's Ghost, he said, you know, the character was a teenage boy and he was a golfer. He was on the high school golf team. And he said, you know, my fastball won't break a pane of glass. I can't sink a free throw. I'm not big enough to play on a football team, but I can hit a golf ball.
And I
And-
just want to be better.
And I think, you know, for a lot of people, if you think about what's important to you and can I get better at this rather than frustrating yourself by stuff that you aren't going to be any good at, but you keep trying it for whatever reason. And you think about the number of people that are stuck in jobs that they don't like.
Yes. That's why, you know, I go back to what I said a little bit ago while we were on break. If I'm not having fun at what I'm doing, I ain't going to do it.
And you won't be any good at it either.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get any better.
Oh, I can always get better.
Oh.
I can always get better. But you know what? Getting better also leads me to the next question, which is how did winning the Seamus Award affect you? I mean, doesn't that help make you get better?
Did you bring it with you?
No, well, actually, if you held up the cover of the book, it's that book mounted on a plaque, or that book cover mounted on a plaque.
Which book?
Lost Little
Oh,
Girl.
Lost
But
Little Girl.
I'm gonna, okay, here's where
Yes, yes.
where I'm gonna brag a little bit. I got
Please do.
Yes, that book was reviewed in Strand Magazine, which is a magazine for mystery fans. And it says Lost Little Girl is an example of a private investigator novel done right. It doesn't try to reinvent the genre, nor is there anything especially unique about it, which makes it quite unique and a nice change from the formulaic PI novels being published today. Jackson Gamble is indeed a jaded PI, but unlike many modern-day fictional PIs with their nihilism and violent streaks, Gamble is someone you'd like to have a conversation with.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I thought I was.
Bravo.
The audience is
Yeah,
participating.
Audience participation.
Yes, yes.
They're
But-
listening.
Yeah, they're listening. But the Strand magazine is a magazine specifically for
industry publishing.
No, it's not an industry magazine. It's a consumer magazine, and they publish mostly their short stories. The Strand magazine, I think, originated in London back in the 1880s, and for a long time it was the primary vehicle for Sherlock Holmes stories that Conan Doyle wrote.
Mhm.
And then it went out of business, I'm going to say, in about 1950. It finally shuttered. Well, 25 years ago, it got picked up again in the U.S. So this comes out of, I think, someplace. And they continued to just publish 3 or 4 short stories. They publish interviews,
Yeah, go
and they publish reviews. But there's always a Sherlock Holmes story in it. So they've held true to that. And it's a kind of a literary magazine, but for mysteries.
Yeah.
Short story mysteries.
My only magazine was Mad Magazine.
And
So,
I don't know if that's still around. I think maybe it is.
well, I think it's online.
It's still.
My
Yeah.
magazine was Archie.
Archie?
Archie.
So were you Veronica or were you Betty?
I was Veronica.
You were Veronica because she had money.
Yeah.
She was hot.
Well, you're
What else did you
listening-
expect?
Yeah.
You're listening to The Author's Edge with Guy L. Freer and Bob Price. Coming to you weekly on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on KWRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 FM. And Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. You can also view our latest videos of past shows at authors-edge.com, online, and download valuable information from marketing and publishing. And can you describe your approach to developing characters for your story, Greg?
Well, I tried to think about what reasonable people will do, and you know,
Reasonable people.
That's really
well, real. Let's say
Kinda
real.
out-of-body
What would a
thinking,
real? What would a real person do?
Hmm.
Not what would a superhero do? Not what would a secret agent do?
No James Bond.
No, none of that. There are people who do that and they do it well.
So Tom Cruise isn't going to star in your movie, huh?
No.
Who would you have star in your movie?
John Boyd. Do you know who John Boyd is?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I gave that a lot of. Okay, John Boyd is. There's a TV show called FBI.
Right.
Okay, and he.
I watch it.
All right, and he plays Stuart Scola.
Yes, I know.
He's a kind of a low key guy, which is sort of the way my
Yes.
my PI doesn't go around shooting people indiscriminately.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's very low key, kind of a sensible.
I know. Yes. Perfect. I like
That's
him.
what I thought. In the old days, I would have said John Hurd, but he's dead, and he'd be well into his 70s.
Well, with AI, you can
I
resurrect.
guess I probably could,
Yeah.
but I thought he had that kind of laconic voice.
Yes.
Which is
Yes. Okay. So who would be your Maggie?
Her name is. I wrote it down because I can never quite remember it. Her
Taylor
name.
Swift.
No.
No.
Her name is Erica Christensen.
And I don't know her.
Okay, Erica Christensen is the female homicide detective on a show called Will Trent.
I know her.
Okay.
I watch Will Trent.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
show.
Will
Yeah,
Trent?
Will Trent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
Will
good one.
Trent.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's wonderful.
Yes, he is.
Is it
Oh
on-
my
is it
goodness,
on
he is.
Netflix?
No,
It- no.
it's on ABC.
It's on it. Yeah. And yes, I know her.
Trent or
She's
Trent?
she's the redheaded one.
Yes.
Yes, and oh, it didn't end well for her.
Oh, it did not.
It did
No, it didn't. But
not.
I'm thinking we're going to have to figure out a way to get around that. 'Cause it
Yeah.
wasn't a real serious crime. It was just a
Yeah. No, it was a
it
serious
was an
crime.
error in judgment.
But it was serious. But yeah, it was serious.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's not get there. Let's not go there
Yeah.
because it's not.
Thank
This is yeah. But it was a serious. It was serious.
She would be my Maggie.
Yeah. Oh, she's good. Oh my goodness, she's good.
Well, we're talking
so-
about your approach to characters, though. And we got off track because
Yes.
somebody said something about movies and actors.
Well,
and,
because I wasn't sure how to answer it. I'm not.
Well, I was helping him out.
Yeah, she was helping me.
All right. So all right, let's go to. He writes in first person, which is really he writes in first person, which is really harder to write than in third person.
It is.
Okay. So why?
It is because, well, we touched on it briefly where I said, okay, if you read like a Dan Brown, you got different characters, but you're getting the same thing from different points of view. So you don't need quite as complicated a plot.
True.
When you write in first person, you're only inside of one person's head. That means
Simplifies it.
It simplifies certain things, but it means that the story has to keep moving. We don't keep circling back and revisiting it now from this guy's point of view or that guy's point of view. And that probably is the hardest thing for me to do, is to plot these things, because
it's like hit the ball and drag the body.
Well,
Huh?
well, it's like, Paul McCartney was a songwriting machine, is a songwriting machine, and they just fly
Flow.
out. You can sit down and in 10 minutes he'll have a song. I can't do that. My mind doesn't work that way. I have to really think about it, and that's why it takes me about a year to write a book.
Okay.
Some writers say, well, I just go ahead and write the thing as fast as I can as a first draft, and then I go back and fix it up. I don't.
Plot it
when I'm
out.
done with this chapter, that chapter is DONE, done.
Right.
And there's no going back to it. So now we go on to the next one, and now we go on to the next one. And
So
it
you
just,
kind of like plot it out.
yes.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I know how it's going to end.
You know the ending.
I absolutely know the ending. I just don't know how to get there
Yeah,
in a
it's
way
the
that keeps the
in-between.
reader engaged.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
that we're not
See,
just
some
obviously.
writers don't know how the book is going to end.
Yeah.
Some people don't know how they're going to get from the beginning to the end. They know kind of what's going to happen, but they don't always sure how it's going to end.
I always know how my books are going to end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he reads the last chapter first.
Because because they're nonfiction.
Because they're nonfiction. Well, here's a name, since you have a French background, you might recognize Émile Zola.
Yeah,
Okay.
Émile Zola.
Émile Zola referred to it as the experimental novel. And he did just what we're talking about, was he would start to write the thing and he'd say, well, let's see where this goes. And let's see how we're going to get there. And, he did okay. And I have some writer buddies at Level Best who kind of do the same thing. I have a friend out in Utah, Libby Seaprin is her name, and she writes books that are set in Italy, and it's the same thing. She just kind of sees where it takes her.
It seems hard.
It
in
is
my
hard.
mind.
It is hard. If I had a storyboard, and in fact, and you and I have talked about this separately, as I'm thinking about asking AI to just give me an outline. I can write the book. I'm a very good writer. I'm not a very good plotter.
Yeah.
AI can do that.
AI is really
Yeah, just
good
just
with
give
the
me a
outline.
basic outline,
Yeah.
and
But you could do the basic outline yourself too.
I used to be able to. I did it 2.5 times.
Well, I bet you could do it again.
Maybe.
I think you're underestimating yourself.
It's easy to do.
The only thing is that it's simple using AI for an outline. And really, you can use maybe 2 or 3 platforms, Claude or Perplexity or Pi, and get 3 different versions and kind of take a look at it
That's true.
and pick
And
and
pick
choose
what
Yeah,
you
what
like.
you really like.
Yeah.
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 It's like if you were a ghostwriter, say for James Patterson,
Right.
and who's phenomenally successful.
Right.
But if you look at his books now, it'll say by James Patterson with
Somebody
with Ralph
else.
Freer,
Yeah.
with Guy
Right.
Freer, with whoever.
Right.
And my
Robert
understanding,
Price.
Robert
Yes.
Price, and my
Yeah.
understanding is how he does it is he gives these guys an outline and they sort of write it, and give it back to him, and then he kind of Pattersonizes it, if that's
Right.
a correct term.
Right.
And that's how that gets done, because otherwise you couldn't be that prolific, I don't think.
I
What-
agree.
How many books is Patterson?
I have no idea.
But I
You'd
think
have to-
it's
I don't know.
100 or
But
something.
I know that the fellow that founded the Heartland Writers Guild, before he died, he wrote 500 novels. And I did the math one time, and that works out to about 11 books a year over his lifetime. And I thought, well, but he writes Westerns, and they're a little shorter. They're 40,000 words, they're not 80,000. And I thought, well, okay, so you could change like Bullet to Trigger, and Text to Rowdy, and Laramie to Cheyenne, and then hit print.
Yeah.
I don't, how else could you do that?
Right.
You know?
That's
And-
incredible.
And that's one of the things I'm trying to avoid, is not to keep, reusing plot devices and
Right.
situations.
Making them fresh.
Yeah,
Making them fresh.
yeah, because otherwise it does become very formulaic, and there are certain genres, romance novels come to mind. You may remember we had a speaker come in one time, and I want to say she was working for Harlequin. Do you remember that?
Yes, I
presentation?
do.
And she said, okay, they got to have this many words by 6 weeks out. There has to be a kiss by page 60.
And it's formulaic.
And they got to do, I forget if it was 3 or 4 of them a year.
Yeah.
Well, what are you doing?
Well, sex is always the same.
Well, it is, but with Harlequin, they can't be that explicit either. So what
No,
are you
they
really
can't.
doing here?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That
I'm not sure what kind of writing that is.
it's boring is my thought. That's why I could never get into Harlequin.
Probably fairly remunerative, but
Yeah, no, I could never get into that. Never ever.
it would seem like it's not really your book.
And to read the same thing over and over and over again, it's just you're just reading words on a page.
But that's why people eat at McDonald's, because it's predictable. They know what they're going to get. And that's why you watch you watch Law and Order for 13
Well,
years,
I
or 20
did.
years,
Yeah.
because you know what you're going to get. And it's like you're getting back together with friends that you know and you're comfortable with.
Yeah, granted. However, with shows, it's going to be different material. And Harlequin and things like that, it's the same material. It's
Yeah.
the same. They just change names. It's not different material.
No, not really.
So
Or a Hallmark movie, same thing. And we
yeah, well,
one of our-
now wait a minute. Now I'm going to stop you right there, okay? Because now you're getting into my territory, and there are certain Hallmark things that I happen to like to watch.
okay, let me give you a plot summary. Okay, it's
Don't go there.
Christmas. Boy meets girl. Boy and girl have a fight. Boy and girl break up. Boy and girl meet at the Christmas tree lot and realize they made a mistake, and they get back together again. Curtain.
No, wait. You forgot the kiss.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
That's right.
That's how it ends. And that's where my husband makes sure he has the clicker in his hand. And he changes the channel
Yes.
because he knows that the next one is going to start. And if I get into the next one, he's going to lose the TV.
He's trapped.
He's trapped for another 2 hours.
Can't watch Fox News.
But you know what's great about is that I can put it on and I can go about my business and do whatever else I want to do. And I can come back to it. And I know exactly what's going
Right,
on.
Yeah,
Right.
you
And
never
I
miss
like it.
anything.
And
I
if
didn't
you're,
miss a
if you're
thing.
sitting at the laundromat waiting for the spin cycle to finish, and you've got
Right.
a Harlequin book, you can,
Well, that's true.
you know.
That's absolutely
Or if
true.
you're on the plane and you got an hour to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
And,
true.
and that's why you see them in grocery stores and in airports.
Absolutely. We have a quote from your last book that you gave us, The Woman in the Wind. Okay. Let's share that. And
Okay.
all right, you gave that to me to share.
Okay.
All right.
See if I remember what it was.
Well, I'm going to read it. So
Okay. Oh,
it'll,
yeah,
shouldn't-
all right.
All
So I'll
right.
get a prompt.
Yeah, so you have a prompt, okay? It was nearly dark when I pulled out of the rustic retreat parking lot and drove the rest of the way into town. I stopped on the public square for a late supper at the restaurant Hubert Bedell had recommended. As I was parking my car, I noticed a small gathering of old-timers seated on concrete benches around a Confederate Civil War monument depicting a rebel soldier standing at order arms. I wondered if perhaps they were dreaming of the day that the South would rise again. The restaurant in question, and the only eating establishment in Harding that appeared to be open at this hour, was called Cal's Country Cafe. Beside me, the only other customers in place were an elderly man sitting at the counter nursing a cup of coffee and a couple in a booth near the back arguing in easily overheard spirited whispers about something having to do with somebody's shiftless brother-in-law. In the window near the booth where I was sitting, a couple of green bottle flies were buzzing dispiritedly against the glass, apparently having exhausted their strength, trying to get back outside. I wondered whether they might have the right idea, but it was late. I was hungry, and driving into town, I hadn't seen any place else that offered meal service. So, tell me, can you tell us about the story? Tell us what that particular quote have.
I think it sort of speaks to the lifestyle
Mhm.
that you know. I actually know a couple of private detectives, and I have one who is in Tennessee, and he reads my books and he likes them a lot. And it's really what that life is. It's sort of like if you're in the Army where you have 10 seconds of terror and 10 hours of boredom. And a lot of PI work is just kind of down and dirty and gritty and boring and bleh. And then something happens and that sort of makes it exciting. But this is just what that life is.
Okay.
And he's got this job that if you sort of read the whole book, he doesn't really believe in this job that he took. But
Jackson does.
yeah, and he told the client, he said, I'm not buying this story of yours at all, but we'll try it for a couple of days and let's see what happens. And it's now he's stuck in this small town in Tennessee, and he's supposed to be bird dogging this woman who may or may not be staying in a old time motor court hotel, but he goes to get something to eat and he's just thinking, what am I doing here?
So what's the premise of this particular book?
There is a newspaper reporter who has stumbled onto a story that he thinks is going to land him either a Pulitzer Prize or he'll get reassigned to, who knows, the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. But because it's political and it's an election year and the newspaper is sort of behind this candidate that would be discredited, they don't really want to publish it.
So they're looking for the truth.
No, he's looking for a way to kind of get even with
to
everything.
get famous.
And this woman, the woman in the wind, is the keeper of the, we'll call it the dossier or the file or the notebook or whatever you want to call it,
Okay.
that proves his story. And so what he wants is to track her down so he can get his hands on this file, the MacGuffin, that will force the newspaper to publish the story. Because they don't want to do it because their guy is going to be smeared by this revelation. That's kind of the premise.
Who's the protagonist in this?
Gamble.
Yeah.
Jackson. Yeah.
Okay.
Jackson. And the antagonist?
Well, it turns out it's the reporter, and it turns out that there's a little more to it than.
Okay. And we don't want to give anything away.
Well, buy the book.
Buy the book.
All of y'all that are curious, buy the book.
Okay. And what do you want how do you want the reader to feel about the book? I mean, what is it what's the message of the book?
Does it have to be a message?
Yes, there's always a message in a book.
Well,
There's always a message.
Do
I
you
think
really think so?
it goes
Yes.
it kind of goes with the idea of noir a little bit, which is, things do work out, but not always the way you would like. And we see all kinds of examples in the real world of how things sometimes turn out, but you don't get the part, or the wrong guy gets elected, or you get convicted of a crime you didn't commit. That stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like a Hallmark book where there's a kiss at the end and everything is good. Sometimes stuff
Bad
is
stuff happens
nasty
to-
and dirty,
Right.
but that's the world he's in.
Okay.
And so he does the best he can and he gets the best outcome he can, but it's not a perfect outcome.
Okay.
It's just the best he can do. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. You want to get better, you want to be the best you can, but you got to realize that there are limitations. And you're
Right.
not going to, if you can get 3/4 of what you were hoping for, maybe that was a good day.
Right.
Or maybe you break even.
Right. Long Time Gone. Now that's the next book.
Yes.
And what's the premise of that one?
Okay. The premise of that is that a teacher at a small college in Tennessee disappeared 5 years ago. He taught his last class. He called his wife and said, I have a faculty meeting. I'll be home late. And he just disappeared. And so after all of that time, his wife finally decides she wants to know what happened to him. And so she hires P.I. Jackson Gamble to try to track him down.
So you stole the idea about the husband always dies?
I guess I did. But we don't know that he's dead. We just know that he's gone.
We're
For a
looking
long
for the
time.
body.
A Long Time Gone.
Yeah,
Long time.
a long time gone.
Okay.
And so and he was a teacher of classical languages. So then I had to get into Ovid's Ars Amatoria, because that was what he wrote his dissertation about. And so I had to remind myself what that poem was. That got him kicked out of Rome, by the way. Ovid wrote that, and that got him kicked out of Rome.
It happens every time.
Yeah, it does.
Oh.
And because Augustus didn't like it.
Okay. We need to make sure that we have 3 minutes left. We've
Okay.
been chatting for a long time. Can you believe that?
Hopefully to some purpose.
Now, the last thing
You're on track.
yeah, I am, being an
Yeah.
English teacher for 39 years. I
Right.
know when the
You
bell
use
rings.
your hand.
Yeah.
I know when that bell
Right.
rings.
You don't want to be standing next to
Okay,
the door
with
'cause you get
respect to
trampled.
authors promoting their work, what do you think about paid reviews, paid contest entries, and paid guest spots on broadcast?
I think that makes a lot of money for paid reviewers, paid contest holders. That's not in my experience.
How do you advertise for your books? Real
well,
quick, you've got 2 minutes.
Trade advertising in magazines like this, activities like what we're doing right now. I've done any number of podcasts. I've done speaking engagements. But at the end of the day, I think one thing you have to have is a backlist.
You have to have a what?
You have to have a backlist, because if somebody, let's say I write a book and somebody picks it up and says, boy, that's a really great book. What else has this guy done? And if the answer is nothing, that's as far as it's going to go.
Right.
So, part of it is you have to have a body of work, and,
Right.
and I think you have to be visible. And that's a little bit of a hard thing, because where we live, there aren't a lot of events. Most of the authors that are under contract to my publisher live on the East Coast. And on any given weekend, somewhere between Boston and Richmond, there's going to be an author event where you can go and speak or be on a panel or, and kind of press the flesh. We don't have that opportunity in Southeast Missouri. There are a couple of things, but
Right.
not many.
Right.
And so it is a little bit harder.
It was
And it's-
interesting. I was looking at a list of conventions and writing.
Okay, we're down to 1 minute.
And the point is that they were all in Chicago or
Right.
San
they're in
Francisco,
New York, they're in
and-
Washington, they're in Boston,
yeah,
they're in New Jersey. Yeah.
East Coast. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you again for having me. It's always fun to come and talk with you. We'll do this again when the next book comes, I hope.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will. I only did that once today. Absolutely.
Good for
Twice.
you. Twice.
Thank you for tuning in to Author's Edge. Tune in again next week for more tips, resources, and your favorite conversations. Our next guest will be Barry. How do you say his last name again? Barry Fansteel, and we will be chatting about his book
Local
of
celebrity.
Love and Loyalty, An Immigrant's Journey. Till then, see you around the inkwell.
What inkwell?